I'm joined now by retired Lieutenant General Richard Newton, former Assistant Vice Chief of Staff with the U.S. Air Force. Always great to have your insight. Clearly, a lot of capabilities with these drones. Could this be a game changer?
Well, good evening, Marnie. I believe they are. In fact, the whole $800 million package, I think, is a game changer. And as Kelly reported, is up to $2 billion. It will be, because it will compel and also continue to enable the Ukrainian military to maintain air superiority, but also put in plight, Russian convoys, troops in place, even armored vehicles.
Where else and when have these drones been used, these switchbacks?
Well, these switchbacks have been used. It's been in the U.S. inventory for a while. They've been used on battlefields, in Iraq and Afghanistan and so forth. They're very lethal, very capable on the U.S. side. And the U.S. has quite an inventory of drones, or what I would also refer to as unmanned aerial vehicles. These are tactical weapon systems that are very capable and as reported, against troops in place and or small vehicles and so forth. So again, proven on the battlefield, and I think is going to be a game changer in Ukraine.
And switchblades, by the way, I misspoke there. Do these drones violate any rules of engagement? Could Putin use these and the use of them given from the U.S. as an excuse to escalate further?
No, I don't believe so. These are on the lines of providing stingers and javelins, as reported, and other weapon systems that are part of this $800 million package. But again, though, I think it's going to be very helpful to the Ukrainian forces as they engage, especially those forces coming into trying to encircle Kyiv and so forth. And it also will give the Russian leadership and the Russian military that are with boots on the ground there, pause in terms of, compelling them to think that they're in harm's way here because of this new added capability.
You know a lot about this as a former drone commander. The U.S. did authorize a drone strike last August in Afghanistan as a result of the U.S. forces who were killed at the airport there. 10 civilians were killed in that attack. What do you say to critics who would argue or say that drone warfare is unethical?
Well, first, any loss of civilian life in a conflict is tragic. If you recall, that particular strike took place a day after 13 of our U.S. military were killed. In fact, you and I were on scene, at least on air that evening. What I would say is that war should be the last use of any type of instrument tool. But unfortunately, civilians get in the crosshairs and so forth, and it's just tragic. I would say that our military, and I would also speak for the NATO military as well, does everything we possibly can to prevent certainly civilian loss of life in any conflict. Although we're seeing right now, apparently Putin doesn't believe that. He's a force of terror, and his atrocities are rising every hour against the Ukrainian people. But nonetheless, certainly the U.S. military does everything it possibly can to prevent this tragic loss of civilian life.
Finally, General, over the last decade, Russia has built up an arsenal of reconnaissance drones. What do we know about their capabilities using these instruments, this technology, and how they're being used right now in this conflict?
Well, Marnie, interestingly enough, they're lagging behind the West in terms of capabilities from drones or, again, unmanned aerial vehicles. They have about 500 of these in their inventory, but they're not really as capable as we find with U.S. military and also with our NATO allies as well. And so, but they're primarily used not as attack aircraft, but more or less as reconnaissance, surveillance, and therefore they'll try to provide, updated information to commanders in the field. But so far, in day 21, we've seen a very limited use of their drone capabilities. Frankly, as you compare it to how effective the Ukrainian military has used their drones.
Well, I hope you're right. This is a game changer. This is a critical point in this battle. Lieutenant General Richard Newton, always great to see you. Thanks again. Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.